Know that we're going to be able to continue that energy through our luncheon conversation today. You are all part of a pilot experiment we're doing today. For the first time, we are live streaming our luncheon, and we're doing it to a select audience to see if we can do this successfully. So I'd like to welcome those who are remote today. They are members of our technical advisory panel for the Accessibility Observatory National Evaluation Pooled Fund Study. So folks who are members of state DOTs from around the country have the opportunity to listen in today, and we will test the technology later as they enter questions in for our conversation. We have a notable CTS milestone this year. It's our 30th anniversary. It's been fun this year. Our annual meeting, of course, we focused on that and featured some great put some focus on some great award winners and some of our history there. Each month in our Catalyst, we're trying to bring some attention to our history, so please take note and look for that. In addition, you all had an opportunity to pick up one of our flash drives at the registration desk, and that's got a 30th anniversary logo on it, so please take advantage if you didn't have a chance to pick one up. As you can see, CTS continues to be active on social media. It's been one of our growth areas this year. We're working hard to be more active on social media, and hopefully you're seeing a growth in our presence there. And please take note so you can engage with us that way. Also want to remind you that coming November, it's never too soon to talk about that, the 28th annual CTS Annual Research Conference, so that's a pretty big deal. 28 of our 30 years we've been able to deliver a conference. We will once again do the one-day format, the single-day format, on Thursday, November 2nd. The theme is Curiosity, Discovery, and Innovation, and we will be back at the Commons Hotel. So look forward to seeing all of you there. So it is with great pleasure today that I'm able to introduce our speaker, Adie Tomer. Adie is a fellow at the Brookings Institution's Metropolitan Policy Program, where he directs the program's infrastructure portfolio. His work focuses on metropolitan transportation, broadband, and the intersections between infrastructure and technological development. It's been especially pleasing to get to know Adie because we were able to attract some attention in some of his work for our Accessibility Observatory. And we just had a great conversation exploring ways that we can build on this and look for more opportunities to partner in the future, and I'm really looking forward to that. So with no further ado, let me have Adie come up to the podium.
How's everyone doing? Good? Can you hear me okay? All right, good. I like to speak relatively casually. That's recorded on video, and I guess I'm being recorded right now too. So I'm not just saying it offline. It's especially important in these days, coming from DC, to know that we can also still be very comfortable there and speak off the cuff. I don't know if maybe it's not a good DC joke town. I'm just thinking of him in the bushes right now. It is good to talk about something else. Let's just put it that way. If you're from DC, when we, this is a topic that's really near and dear to us, and every time we talk about it, it feels like it's around a similarly large-scale event around transportation or even like a broader envelope infrastructure. So what's happening, not actually right now, last time I talked about this in a big setting like this, it was Transportation Research Board meetings, which those of you probably know, that's the big transportation palooza in DC every year. But this is, next week is actually Infrastructure Week all across the country. I'm not sure there's any events happening here in Minneapolis. They're certainly all across the country, but definitely, in Washington. Big meetings on Monday that you can live stream where Secretary Chow will be speaking. I'm sure she'll be saying something about the infrastructure bill, which will probably be a question, I'm sure, later, invariably about something. I can answer right now, I don't know anything. But every time there's those big infrastructure events, oftentimes I find that the conversation naturally goes towards this place of what are we building, right? What's it gonna look like? What's these new exciting changes? And sometimes I think we lose sight of what we're really mean when we're talking about infrastructure. And it's no different than any other policy area. It's about people, right? It's about making sure people can get to the activities that they want and need to do to find opportunity in life, to find success, to find happiness, frankly. So whether it's students studying, whether it's going shopping, whether it's doing some exercise in the park, or of course going to work, transportation is what helps us connect to that opportunity. It helps us actually access opportunity. And it can be kids getting onto a school bus, people packing into a train, cars, of course, driving on the road, or bikes and pedestrians, either getting to and from work or just enjoying a walk or a bike ride. Transportation is everywhere. It's with us every day. It's why I like working in this policy area more than almost any other sector, because everyone has really good informed opinions about it too, because they use it all the time, right? So it's really good at holiday cocktail parties too, right? So with that said, what makes it possible is those transportation networks moving together. But what we have been trying to think more about, and the University of Minnesota's team has been doing for even longer than we've been doing it, is think about this concept of accessibility. And what I mean by this is, how do we make sure that we are helping people, underscore people, connect to opportunity in a way that is more sustainable, it's more efficient, and it's more equitable, right? And that equity bit you're going to hear a lot about today. So our research project is to help kind of answer those questions. So my talk today is going to move in 3 different parts. And first, I want to talk a little bit about how cities are developing and some patterns there. Second is kind of not only what is accessibility, but how do we plan around it? And then third, what's the way forward? And hopefully that can get a conversation going both here in this room, but for all of you when you leave here today too. So let's go back to where I kind of started. So how are cities developing today? And I think this kind of context is really important. Again, if we think about transportation outside of just its physical barriers, but actually how it connects to other sectors of our economy and policy. So I have a confession to make. I say this all the time in almost any speech. I figure a way to squeeze it in. I am from Florida. I'm a Floridian. We do exist. We're real people. People are born there, not just migrate down there. It's embarrassing. It's a weird state. If you're on Twitter and you're not following Florida Man, you're not doing the internet right. That is an amazing account of what's happening out there on the streets of Florida. But also, I think Florida is a really good symbol of how we have decided to physically develop the communities in the United States, especially in the automobile era. So this is, obviously, I'm from the other coast of Florida, which is a real rivalry if you didn't know about. This is the southeast coast, obviously Miami. You can see up at the top. I want you to kind of keep your eyes up there as we go through the next few slides. But this is what Miami looked like in 1984. And what ends up happening is that Miami wasn't even close to being done growing out. And if you don't know Miami's geography, you probably do, at least by name, that's the Everglades right there. So all that development pushed as far as it could, and they continue to kind of carve off little land when they can. But it also, I wouldn't say densified exactly, but filled in everywhere it could in between. And you can see big old boulevards, and of course the interstate and the highway, the toll road, carving through there. But it's not just something that happened in the United States. Here's the desert playland known as Dubai. I mean, it just eats up the land. It just ate it up in about no time. Now, here is it on real steroids. This is one of the global megalopolises in the region, Bangkok. I mean, it almost felt like the middle half to like 3/4 of the screen, it didn't exist, right? And in 30 years, it just took it over, right? So it's a massive amount of land consumption and outward growth. But it's not just the case of some of these 3 really well-known global cities, right? So all cities of all different sizes, all global regions, all moving outward at rapid paces. So these developments help visualize a current model we use to get people around cities. It's this, right? It's not complicated. I'm not anti-car, I want to be clear. Cities prior to the automobile, and especially prior to interurban local rail, they had to operate at different scale, right? You had to stay close enough to walk and bike, right? The car has opened up amazing potential for people to get the space they want, to travel at different times a day, and move with incredible power and speed. But it also has affected how we've planned our communities, right? So we tend to focus in our planning documents on moving vehicles as quickly as possible. It's one of our priorities. Because so many vehicles are out there, we tend to focus almost exclusively at times on congestion and solving that problem if it's even solvable. And then we've also overlooked some of the unintended consequences from this building model. Now, for many of us, we tend to think of the results of all that spatial development that I showed you as the growth of something called spatial mismatch, right? So people no longer live where their economic activities typically take place. Take a second and think for yourself about what your daily trips look like. Is your job within walking distance? Is your grocery store within walking distance? How about where, if you have kids, where they either go to school or where their nighttime and weekend activities are? Chances are maybe hopefully one or two of those buckets isn't within walking or biking distance, but probably not all of them, right? And think about how transformatively different that is than any time in human history, right? So we're living through something really fascinating. Now, that spatial mismatch has caused some very real consequences for how our markets look. So this is vehicle ownership by different countries. You can see we're all the way on the left there, really high. 9 out of 10 households have a car, households. You can see much lower rates as you go to the right, which is roughly correlating with development levels. So still really high, and you can think there's some hope over there. But here's the other thing. Those less developed or emerging markets, they're motorizing too. And they're also moving those vast distances. That's what you saw happening in Bangkok, right? Is dramatic amounts of motorbike penetration affecting how and where people travel. Now, another impact has been what we all spend on transportation. This is so under talked about in the United States in particular, but it's actually a challenge all across the country, and it will be increasingly more of a challenge as more of them motorize. We're the number 2 household expense. I'm assuming everyone here either works or is interested in transportation, right? So this policy community is responsible for the second highest household expense. We spend more on transportation than we do on food, right? So now, in some ways, that's a credit to our agriculture community that's made food cheaper, but in some ways, it's a scary sight to think about how much of our household budgets is going just to get around. In terms of sustainability, most of you have probably seen this, but for those of you who haven't, transportation as of 3 months ago, I think, or roughly, just became the #1 polluting sector in the economy. So that's a nice award we got from manufacturing. Manufacturing lost it before, and then energy is what transportation just overtook. These are real challenges. And for those of you who ever had the great opportunity to travel to emerging markets and to see what happens when you couple motorization with a lack of pollution controls, it looks like this street scene or highway scene from China. Now, on the infrastructure investment side, at the same time, we have so much we need to rebuild. So these are estimates from McKinsey. These are real capital numbers. These are going to absolutely dramatically impact public budgets from the local to the national scale. But think about where these are happening too. 59% of the infrastructure investment needs are in emerging markets across the world. So there's going to be dramatic infrastructure built. And of course, it's going to continue to happen in markets like the United States too. But how and what it looks like is an incredibly important question that is still underway. We have not fully decided what our communities are going to look like. They're living, breathing organisms. They're constantly evolving. So the question is, how can we build around accessibility? So remember the picture with the cars? I should credit, these are amazing Brookings illustrators on staff for us, so this is not my hand drawing, nor my kids. This, to me, looks a lot more like how all of us actually think about transportation every day, which is, where do you want to go, right? What do you want to do? You think about that first. You don't think about, well, I'd really like to take a train ride today, right? As much as I think most of us probably love trains, right? I want to go somewhere that train can take me to, right? We can't lose sight of that kind of objective. And what accessibility does is allows us to think and orient around access to those destinations, right? It's a different way of thinking about transportation. It's not the end unto itself, it is the means to something else. Now, what feeds into accessibility and what you could argue, what feeds into our overall transportation and built environment? We would argue it's 3 kind of prisms to look through. So the first is transportation itself, right? Of course, that makes sense. It's the actual, the vehicles, whatever mode they might be, the roads and the rails that you lay down, let's say. Second is urban planning, right? or our land use, right? It's the thought of how we integrate the design of, well, how we use land, right, to connect with transportation. These two kind of buckets, before I go to the third, have traditionally been the focus of accessibility researchers, right? It's how do we mix up transportation and land use together in a good way rather than thinking about them separately. But there's a third one that really matters too that we can't lose sight of. Think back to those kind of McKinsey numbers, right? But you can think about it right here in Minneapolis or wherever you're originally from, right? Is the constant debates about how do we pay for all this? Or how about the household expenses, right? Does everyone have the personal resources to get them to those key destinations that help our entire economies get moving, right? If not, what's the role of government to help them get there? Are we having those active debates? They are critical components when you toss all three together in a bit of a Venn diagram to think about what matters in accessibility. Let me show you what accessibility looks like on the ground, though, in a way, too, which might help explain the entire phenomenon and why it matters so much. So this is Liverpool in the UK. This is the site of the, I believe it's called the Old Royal Liverpool Hospital. And what they were talking about a decade ago now was moving that hospital to this new site. Now, it might not seem very far. We don't have scale on this map, but it's quite a little bit away. It's a few miles. Here's the issue, though, is that the original site was well served by transit of all kinds, including rail transit. The proposed site was off of a new highway. By all their metrics from traditional transportation planning, looked great, right, if you just focused on driving. The problem was, if they actually ran access models, they could figure out who benefited and who didn't. So for those of you who done work with access in the past or seen some of the amazing publications that CTS and the university has put out, these are called isochrones, which is a technical way of saying who can get to where they want to go in what amount of time. So the people who lived near that new hospital, they were going to do really well. But hospitals aren't local serving institutions, they're regional, right? And look at how many people were going to drop off in their ability to get better service, right? Now, part of the problem was because it wasn't connected to all modes of transportation. So when they ran that full modal accessibility analysis, it didn't make sense. Now, the natural follow-up, right, is what did they do? The good part is, because the United Kingdom had some accessibility laws on the books at the time, they decided against building the new hospital, and they spent more money rehabbing the current one in the current site. So they ended up maintaining accessibility for their people, hit their budgets a little bit higher, but think about the improvement to the health outcomes and what that meant for making sure families could keep working, that kids could still get to school, the entire economy could function a little bit better. That's the kind of way accessibility can change how we approach the world. So what we've done so far at the Brookings program is trying to think about how do we build out accessibility in a way that's paradigmatic, that people can glob onto. So we've released a series of 3 papers focusing on those 3 core topics. We've also released a major paper that kind of synthesizes everything in, I promise, a short, easily read 10 pages. The other 3 are pretty wonky and academic and much longer, to really talk about what these principles look like on the ground. And so what we found from doing all that work was that there's some real common themes around challenges to get accessibility, moving from something that we theoretically like into something that actually affects how we plan and build our communities and finance them in the future. So let me tick through these one by one. So the first is a complete lack of conceptual clarity, right? I hope the way I'm speaking today comes across, resonates on some level, that the words aren't just words, but they actually connect. But the problem is the definition of access probably inherently looks different to just about every individual. For those of you who work in the academic community in the sense that you read academic journals, if you look for the definition of accessibility, you will find many different ones out there. You'll also find, going to the next mini bucket, if you will, tons of different ways to measure this, right? Do we care about access to jobs? Is that our paramount concern? For us at Brookings, it might be number 1, and that's a big thing that the Accessibility Observatory here studies at the university. But there's also the importance of, right, that's maybe the most important trip we all make every day, but it's only 20 to 25% share of trips. So what about access to food, right? You've seen some of that research out there, right? If you've ever heard the term food deserts, right? That's actually an accessibility analysis. How about just access to the kind of like restaurants and other retail? Well, for any of you who have looked for a new apartment and use Walk Score or Transit Score, that's an accessibility approach, right? So there are many different ways to measure it. But that kind of leads to the third bucket, right? Is that there are no set standards here. And for those of you who work in governance or any place that a business that tends to want to organize a lot of people around a common platform, standards are really, really important. So if we don't know what exactly we're trying to measure, we don't even know what its definition is, and we can't communicate that out in a standard way to other, let's say, co-departments or colleagues, we've got a real challenge to moving it into practice. Second one is legacy issues. We found this constantly in the work we did. And what I mean by that is you often don't tear down what you've already built, right? So the way I like to think about this, going back to the kind of the Florida example, is we really just came into major population boom once not only the car was invented, but also air conditioning. It's really important down there. But we can't now undo the fact that we have taken over what were formerly orange groves and made them, for the most part, subdivisions that are local roads that feed into a collector road, that go to a primary arterial, all these technical engineering terms. They're there. It's going to be really expensive to change them. So how do you work with the bones that you already have? And if we put an access concept over it, right, are we able to boost accessibility in our regions? So one way I want to kind of think about this too, because you see a lot of accessibility talk come from the transit community, who, again, we're really big fans of transit, but transit, conventional transit, may never work in a place like Florida. It may require smaller shared buses, right? Or maybe autonomous vehicles that are shared in the future, who knows? But what we've built is oftentimes what we're stuck with. Who's going to pay for all of it, right? I mean, this is a constant refrain in anything that comes with infrastructure, right? But here's the way I want you to think about it. It's not just the capital to build out infrastructure. It's also the operations of it too, right? So there's live debates happening right now in this state, right, about what kind of operational support comes from different levels of government. At the same time, how do we think about not just funneling pools of money through infrastructure channels? What's the responsibility of real estate developers, right? They're impacting how our infrastructure networks are used. In fact, that's why in many parts of the country they call them impact fees, right? Is should you be paying into the system? Now, the reason we put question marks all over this page is these are not easy answers. But if we're not thinking about it and talking about it, it's going to be really hard to move to an access paradigm. And then finally, governance. For any of you who've seen a org chart of your local favorite government, or just back to high school civics, right? It's not just executive, legislative, judicial. Under the executive, think about all the different department names, right? Well, let's just go conventional. You have Department of Transportation. You have a budget office. You have a land use or urban planning office, right? Think about it. We've actually institutionalized the siloed approaches to how we build out our cities and regions. So if you ever wonder why it seems like they weren't thinking about the land use impacts, they may have actually not had to think about the land use impacts, right? So if you want to move to an accessibility paradigm that brings together different schools of thought and approaches, we've got to address how we organize government too. Think about it like a business reorganization, right? So finally, what's the way forward? The end of that section is so dour. It makes it seem so challenging, and it's going to be. It's going to be really hard to change the way we conceptualize our communities, the way we physically build them, what money feeds into that system. That's really, really tough stuff. But we're optimists. I always try to be glass half full on big ticket items like this. Otherwise, it can be discouraging, right? And I think there is a way forward here. And it's not just our work. So I promise that Minnesota was on there even without coming to present here today. It's really true. So, you have a tremendous amount of efforts that are already happening to move this forward. The Accessibility Observatory shows the example of how you can put out benchmark numbers that are standardized to make places understand what does accessibility, by how they're going to define it under any little project, I don't mean the projects are small, I'm saying any different project they do, that's an opportunity to communicate out these results. And it's not just efforts underway here at the university. There's other folks out there trying to push out these kind of real world tangible examples for people, right? So they can hold on to it. They know what congestion is, right? And if you especially talk to an engineer, they know what their congestion measures are, right? But they've maybe never seen an accessibility measure. That's really important, right? It's a really important method here. Second is we need to standardize these goals in some way. So go from something relatively local at a university and oftentimes looking at metro scale accessibility. I mean, the United Nations, under their Sustainable Development Goals, they're thinking about how do we hardwire these objectives in and communicate them down in a top-down manner. That's what's going to drive that kind of change, right? I think you saw this under, just talking to a new colleague outside about this. Secretary Fox, so from the first time I gave the speech, he was still Secretary Fox of the Department of Transportation. He was the first transportation secretary in history, to our understanding, that talked about transportation being that means to an end, that it was about moving people, helping people connect to opportunity. And part of that was because he grew up in a neighborhood that was isolated by highways. So he actually is young enough to grow up and know what the experience of our experiment in highway building since the 1950s has done to some families, right? So how do you hardwire those goals in? And then third, the example that's the Bogota city logo, but also from Bogota and Lima, they're actually experimenting with actual accessibility practices on the ground. So talking to some colleagues before we came in here today, they're using a different kind of fare card that has adjusted rates based on, by connecting it to tax records, so that's your sync up between different agencies, for low-income households, right? Because they want to make sure that transit in particular is more affordable for them, so they can connect to opportunity, so people not only can hopefully get ahead in life, if you will, but also, frankly, just help the whole economy function, right? If people can't get to where they need to work, everyone suffers, right? And it's something that's happening both here in Minneapolis and every community across the country right now as we grapple with income inequality. So where are we going with some of our work? But I would argue, I think everyone who's touching on this topic is going in the same way. So number one is we need more empirical research. And let me give you an example, right? There's some recent research that came out of Chicago that showed actually by improving by each neighborhood, depending on how much access they had to jobs as a share of the region, this is the same kind of efforts that Andrew Owen and the Accessibility Observatory uses, they found that it improves economic outcomes for those families living there, right? So people are more likely to have employment. They are more likely to have higher incomes, right? We need more research like that to take to our colleagues inside government who are looking for new information and want to make better decisions, right? So on that note, we need to have better and clearer measures, right? We need to have things that we can communicate out to people so they understand what the differences are. And finally, we need to be willing to innovate on our governance frameworks, right? If people aren't talking to each other, if they sit in their operational silos, you're going to keep getting decisions that don't connect with one another, right? And that's not the way that we can build more successful communities in the future. So I want to thank you all for taking the time to listen to this spiel. I hope it makes sense. I hope it makes you think a little bit differently about how your community was built maybe in your lifetime and how it could be built differently in the future. Thanks.
Thank you very much, and we're going to move into questions, so start thinking. I do want to let those watching through live streaming that in order to ask a question, you need to send an email to jschmitz, so that's JSCHMITZ @umn.edu. So is this the first they're hearing of it, Katie? Okay, so they'll need
It should be online. There should be an
Okay,
online.
all right, so I'm gonna get flagged if there's a question from online, but let's start with questions from the local audience here. Yes, we've got one over there.
Since you mentioned autonomous vehicles very briefly, is Brookings doing anything looking at research around that as far as when it might be practical to actually use it beyond the test phase? I think it was the state of New York just announced yesterday or today that they're going to allow testing on the road as well as California. And there's also an I-29 test corridor that Department of Transportation is looking at using, in this neck of the woods. And I'm wondering, when you think that might actually become practical. I've heard from speakers at Stanford, they say it may take another 10 years for the technology to get where it needs to be essentially bulletproof, but also, autonomous delivery vehicles as well.
Yeah, that's a great question. I am not the right person to answer. I'm not an engineer, right? I mean, I think in your answer, you're asking the right question, which is, right now we really are at an engineering stage, and governance is, especially out of DC and in state capitals, is doing what they can around, number one, safety. We just say NHTSA in DC, but NHTSA is really the lead actor in DC right now to make sure they're going to be safe. And the second is states are experimenting with how they allow these AVs to run on their streets, right? Once they come, though, I think to try to, the big question I'm trying to grapple with, and I think a lot of other researchers are too, from kind of the side that we come from, which is more economic, kind of in land use side thinking, is what's going to be the impact on how people want to consume space, if you will, right? How does it change our travel habits? And the short answer would be, we're not going to know, in my opinion, we're not going to know until to your engineering question, till that's answered and these vehicles hit the market, right? And something to keep in mind, there might be someone who knows the stat exactly better than me, but it takes around 20 to 30 years for a vehicle fleet to turn over. So in our lifetime, we are going to see much like we did in the roughly, right, 1900, 1910 or so to 1930 range, when we dramatically repurposed streets. That was not oftentimes what's the right way to say this? There was an active policy debate at the time, too, about how do you use street space, right? It was much more public and under-regulated, but it was regulated in its under-regulation, if that makes sense, right? So the vehicle won. I think it, frankly, won a lot of it because of the marketplace. I don't think it was just some conspiracy of who owned what, although that was part of it in terms of major firms. So we're going to go through something similar in probably every single person who's sitting here's lifetime. For transportation geeks, that's really exciting to live through one of those. What it's going to look like, I don't think anyone has a crystal ball to that. But we'll know more once they hit the streets. That vehicle fleet's got to turn over, and we'll figure out how people respond to it with their other land use decisions that are related to how we travel.
Is another question in the back, or two more? Okay. Anything online yet? Okay.
Yes, I'm from Greater Minnesota, and it's a little less than half the population, a little less than half the economy of Minnesota, but it's still a pretty significant part of the state. How does this apply to Greater Minnesota?
Yeah, I mean, access applies to any place, right? That's what's so cool about it. It's a flexible framework, right? It's what are you trying to access, right? I don't want to pretend to, I can barely speak for the community I live in, right? So, and that's not a DC comment, I just mean in general. It's, there's a lot of people, they have different initiatives, different issues, different demands. It's going to depend on where you live, right? But that's what I want to stress here, and I'm glad you asked that question, right? This is not a big city thought process, right? This is thinking about how do we connect people to opportunity? In lower density places that maybe are doing really well in terms of income growth, they probably can afford, frankly, within past construction choices, right? They probably have a lot of roads. Certainly Minnesota has a relatively high share per capita of road mileage, right? So if they can afford vehicles, they probably have really good access measures. But if you try to run transit through there, it's probably not going to work. Then the question becomes, for those who can't afford it, are they in a really challenging transportation environment to connect to opportunity? What can you do to make sure they can also get to, as one of the major issues for rural communities and all across the country is rural healthcare, let's say, right? And then combine that with a little bit, now I'm flying, but it's, how do you connect that potentially to broadband and telemedicine, which is one of the reasons it's the most interesting, right? So the good part about access is it's meant to take us out of these siloed decisions, right? It's just how do we build roads, let's say, right? And say, hey, we have these really important communities to this state. And I guarantee you every state has the same conversation, right? Is how do we make sure that they have vitality? How do we make sure that we're investing resources wisely? And how do we understand that, frankly, it's not just a state-bordered issue, it's a national issue? That we're in this, economically speaking, together, right? How do we make sure that communities can prosper and we can do so in a way that's gonna allow the next generation to prosper as well?
Let me add something. Al, we may be headed towards county access engineers instead of county highway engineers.
Hi, I wanted to ask about the hospital example, and did they have a way that they're valuing access to decide how much more to spend to keep the hospital in place? And were they required to do that, the law you mentioned, or were there grants or subsidies to cover that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, to our understanding of reading the published literature from the UK, which was like post facto on it, at the time, the United Kingdom required both accessibility plans to be developed at the local level. They also required certain major projects to look into the accessibility impacts. It was not, though, it still required, and I think, honestly, I'm not sure if you could ever build the perfect model for something like this. At the end of the day, right, it's kind of like why I'm actually more optimistic about automation in general, too, not just in transportation. It's like, at the end of the day, you still need someone to make a critical decision, right, and a valued decision. It can't be hardwired, right? In the case of Liverpool, they just decided that they would rather spend the money in that way than moving the hospital and what the adverse economic impacts could be. I'm not sure if they modeled, right, like what would happen to health outcomes and how you fit, right, you can really do some extensive economic modeling here. I'm not sure if they did it. My hunch is they didn't. But it led them to a place where at least they could make a more informed, multi-dimensional decision, right? It wasn't just about, frankly, not transport, right? It wasn't just about a physical like address for a hospital. And actually, in that case, they actually brought transport into the picture. And it really did change their perspective, which is, I think, a really cool lesson, right, on how you can do this in either direction.
questions in the front.
Adie, I know you're thinking about movement of people, but do the accessibility principles, or can they also be applied to the movement of freight?
That's a great question, Gina. Yes, they definitely can. I think I would argue I'm a big freight fan, as Gina knows too. So the freight and logistics community normally they're further ahead of things. And I think you could argue they already hardwire access into their decisions, right? It's why distribution centers open in certain places. I know there's been some recent stuff happening in this region the last few years, but think about actually more a place like Allentown, Pennsylvania. It's a huge, if you guys know that geography of the country, fairly big place. It's a top 100 metro market. It's somewhere between 500,000 and 1 million people. Allentown had seen better economic days, if you will. But it turns out Allentown is a really important strategic place because a lot of East Coast freight rail not ends there, but it effectively ends there. That's one of your last spots where you can get a lot of land. As well as it has really nice distance, equidistance, if you will. It's kind of in the middle of the Northeast corridor. So you get both New York and Philly are relatively equal, but also then Boston and DC, Baltimore too. So they already think about access to put there are huge Amazon facilities in Allentown. What I would argue is probably more important at both the rural as well as the urban context is how are we potentially going to change our travel patterns relative to how we want goods? I think the part where access matters more here is what's the growth in e-commerce, how that's going to change distribution patterns. The Wall Street Journal, if you haven't seen it, has an amazing insert from a couple weeks ago. It's their smart cities section, but they have a whole freight write-up. That's all about how these distribution facilities are moving not for region, not the whole region, but for neighborhood base, because so many people are ordering goods online now. What that means for curb space, how that affects access of local trips too. So it's actually what I'm most fascinated by is how freight is going to intersect at a local level, especially in our most congested markets, and how we're going to fit everyone in and how they want to consume goods at the same time. There's so much to learn there. It's going to be really exciting to see all that unfold too. And I half dodged your question on purpose. So.
Adie, thanks for joining us, and thanks for the kind comments about the freight people being ahead of it. So, I have a question. It seems like your talk is mostly about moving people to the destination of their desire to either work or eat or do whatever. Are you studying and you touched on it here at the end, things are actually moving towards the people. The jobs, because of the internet, are moving towards the people. I don't have to be in the workplace anymore to do my job. I don't have to exit my neighborhood to get things delivered to my door. I can get entertainment through my cable. So are you studying the changes in accessibility of the things actually moving towards the people versus the people moving towards the things?
Yeah, so I'm glad I said something nice about cargo, because now I'll do some gentle pushback in the nicest way possible. What we have continued to find, we have some really good research actually from colleagues of mine, so I'm giving DAP to someone else. If you Google Brookings, distance between people and jobs, some phrase like that, you'll find some great work my colleague Elizabeth Kneebone's done, who studies suburbanization of poverty and distance between people and things, mostly jobs. And that distance has been growing. And actually has started to grow again. Some preliminary research we have behind the scenes since the Great Recession has ended as well. So it's, we like to think it. I think what I would, so that's the general pushback, but then why I think it's a great question too is what we're seeing is there was a general pattern of outward growth that so many of us in this room either grew up with, rather really small, or like as we moved into professional careers and have kind of worked with that, right? The suburbanization of America. What we're seeing now is more of a stratification in the patterns. So you get mixed signals. It's kind of like our politics too, right? In other words, it depends, I'm not trying to make a political comment, it depends which channel you're turned to, and not just TV. I mean, like which channel you're turned to. If you're looking just at probably core, again, I can't speak to exactly, but core, since I came here as a kid, and now it looks really different, a little bit different to me in downtown Minneapolis, right? More condos than I remember in downtown, right? So if you're turned to that channel, it might look like it's an urban explosion. But you can probably go out to certain suburban and exurban communities, and they're growing too. So what we're starting to see is a little bit more stratification, but on net, people are on overall commuting further. So, and we're seeing driving, and the VMT miles are kind of stating it too. Now, freight's a big reason for that because economic activity's back, but it's a mix. The question is, are the distances sustainable? And if it's something that we're okay with, do we have the kind of environmental portfolio behind those travel habits that will make them sustainable? And can people get to where they need to go in a fiscally kind of sustainable way too? Those are probably the questions to ask. You know, unless you want to turn to a whole like publicly controlled land use regime, right? We're probably not going to change how our settlement patterns on their own. You're going to need really big levers for policy that I'm not sure if anyone's actively debating right now.
I've got a question. So when you do work around the world, so you have a much broader picture than I do for sure. When you look around, who is doing well at the governance and finance pieces along with the transportation and land use pieces? And what might we learn from those circumstances?
Oh, that's a great question. Yeah, no one's doing a good job.
We can lead the way then.
Yeah, right, that's totally it. Like, the really exciting part here is, look, there's some really good innovators, actually. You could argue. But the big part here is that I think this is such a nouveau way of thinking. So in particular, in the Germanic countries, right, there is a tradition of housing transportation and land use, if you will, under one broader, especially the national level agency umbrella, right? So that already kind of brings people closer together. There's other traditions in other countries of similar kind of patterns. The challenge is, though, is that we're really used to thinking about these institutional silos. And the sad part of the UK example when we were talking about it is they no longer have those laws on the books because they didn't really like running the accessibility through, like, there's a little bit of ceding control to old institutions, right? Like lowercase p politics comes into all this all the time. So who has power, who's losing it, who's gaining it, and who's gonna win that fight? Right? That's really important here. It can't be undersold. So leadership is really important. We might have to see a lot of institutional change that's almost like lowercase I institutional. It may not be formalized. It may require just really good connection between places. Much like we see general leadership all across the US from a business standpoint, right? When business community, civics, elected leaders are really well synced, those tend to be some of the best communities in helping to grow their economies. But it's not formalized, right? You get a new leadership class in and it might all fall apart. So it's going to be really interesting to watch who can formalize these access measures. There are some places that have some light ones on the books. Most of it's really soft touch. Most of it, as Andrew knows too, it's like access to getting on transit. It's not even necessarily where you can go. They'll just measure, which is it's a good first step, but it's not all the way. So as places try to formalize more of that, are they willing to make institutional changes? And who knows? Jury's out, right?
Mm-hmm. Right. Last questions? Oh, Carissa.
I have sort of a similar question, thinking about the international context and as you're looking across the US as well. Are you seeing examples of places where energy and climate change are entering into these conversations, where you're looking at this intersection of land use and transportation and governance? To what extent are you seeing it being brought into the discussions, and especially are you seeing any places where it's a compelling, meaningful, impactful aspect of the discussion?
Yeah, thanks, Carissa. Well, you know this probably even better than I do of like Europe's the place to go for this, right, on the energy side. I mean, the really powerful tool here is, and why the European markets, like the metro markets, if you will, are so powerful, is they have national level goals that they're tied to. And so those performance indicators are really powerful. To our understanding from the folks we've talked to in the UN, which I want to be clear, not many, and we are not influential in that space, so I don't want to act like but just by actually talking to them, that's their hope, right? Is like if we get these UN SDG, as the acronym, of course, if they get the acronym, if they get the measures on the books, maybe it'll feed down, right? And it'll change development decisions. But for the most part right now, right, most places don't price carbon in whatever way they would do it, right? So if it's not a requirement into their decision making, why are they necessarily going to change those patterns? That was one of the real challenges we found by looking around at this. Wrote this piece about like Uber and Lyft, like transportation network companies, TNCs in Southeast Asia. And there's been all this booming interest in them, right? And how it might be able to unlock some of the natural densities they have, but really low household income. So people, even though things are closer, people can't access them because they don't have the means of transport. And people were excited about the TNCs, but we ran the numbers, and it would cost like 80% of an Indian household's budget for one person to commute by Uber every day in each direction. And it's not a criticism of Uber, it's more just saying it's not available to everyone, right? So I think as folks are looking at the options to unlock more accessibility and linking it up with other goals, whether it be household income or energy and sustainability, it's really important to actually play those out and figure out how many people it's affecting, and that can lead to hopefully more impact. But Austria is the best on this stuff, you know this stuff too, so.
Anyone else? Well, I do think our remote audience is just holding back because they get another opportunity to speak with Adie in about an hour. So I'm trusting they'll have lots of good questions for him at that point. Let's thank Adie. I think it's been a fabulous presentation. And thank you again for coming, and have a good summer. Of course, we hope to see you at the conference, but I'll see many of you in between now and then. So take care. Have a good day.